party.
Woo!
Or I guess I should say, let's rock.
Yeah.
I want to say let's rock today, but that's the wrong movie.
Yeah.
But another great rock and roll movie.
I'm trying to remember what movie that is.
School of Rock.
School of Rock. Oh, that is a really good one.
Yeah, I'm a big School of Rock head.
Yeah.
I was not a big Spinal Tap head until I watched this for the first time for this recording. And I was very upset because now I'm like, this movie is amazing and should have been in my life for the last 15, 20 years.
You know, when you said you hadn't seen it, I was like, oh, this is entirely Ross Speed. He's really going to be into this. So I'm excited to talk about it with you. Yeah.
I'm pumped to talk about it with you. Screenagers, welcome back to the Canon. That lovely voice that you are hearing across from me is the one and only Mr. Bryan Loomis. You've probably heard him on the show before, talking some Harry Potter, but we're going to be talking some Spinal Tap today, as you can tell from the title of this episode and the brief little combo that we were having on the front end there. Bryan, welcome back. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing really well.
Amazing to hear. Amazing to have you back on. Very excited for this. Before we get into This is Spinal Tap fully, I think, we want to do a little intro in case there is anyone who did not listen to our Harry Potter episode together, or anyone who is not familiar with What a Picture, the podcast that you host with your lovely partner, Hannah, who was also recently on an episode talking about the Maltese Falcon.
Yeah.
But Bryan, why don't you give us a quick intro in terms of what it is that you do there and all of your history and relationship to cinema.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I host with my wife the What a Picture podcast. We just finished, as of a couple of days ago, the last episode of season 1 published. So we had been covering the Sight and Sound top 100 greatest films of all time. Maybe not quite as good of a list as the Canon, but still a list that people talk about. And we in seriousness, we very much enjoyed going through that list, and we're excited for what's next, though, because when you start a list, and I'm sure you feel this, Raph, going through the Canon in some ways, of like, when you start a podcast that's associated with a big list of movies, you're committing to like a years long project to get through all of them. And so sometimes it can feel like, oh, am I ever going to like get through this? So we're excited to have that sort of in the rear view mirror and just have a little bit more freedom and flexibility with what we're doing. So we're kicking off season 2. We're going to be doing a mix of some new releases that we care about. We are very much non-franchise people, so we're keeping it pretty focused to like non-franchise, more original storytelling type of movies.
Hell yeah.
And then we're also going to, when we don't have new releases to talk about, we're going to go back through some Best Picture winners of the past for the Oscars, with the important caveat that we are not committing to doing every Best Picture Oscar for the reasons that I've already mentioned. We're not starting another huge project. And we're going to be a little more loosey-goosey with our release schedule. We're going to probably release about twice a month. But it's going to be a good time. So I'm really excited for getting going with some new stuff on the show.
Fun stuff. That's got to be the longest single season of anything. 100 episodes for one season. That's absurd.
It was actually, so we did like in between episodes and stuff, so we got up to 120. It broke my like episode naming thing where I had been using 2 digits for it. And so I thought it was funny to like call it a season, because we've never really thought about seasons until now. But since we were getting done, I was like, would it be funny if we called this season 2 after we've been doing the show for like 2 years and 3 months?
Yeah. so funny. But it is all great. I would highly encourage folks to listen to it, and I feel like anyone who is listening to the canon and interested in this list of great movies, they will also be interested in hearing about another list of great movies and hearing great conversations between you, Hannah, and sometimes, an occasional guest, having great combos about those great movies where there is some overlap for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
I saw
and
y'all did
sometimes
City
there's not.
Lights recently. Yeah,
Yeah, we
that's
did.
on the list as well. That's on both lists. Yep.
I don't
So,
think This Is Spinal Tap though is on the Sight and
unfortunately,
Sound.
no,
Yeah.
but Sight and Sound could use more energy like this is Spinal Tap in general, where it's just like, this is just like a fun hang movie. Not a lot of
Yeah.
that, just like things that people consider more artistically significant. And I feel like there's a tendency to see something like this as more lowbrow, though I would argue it's just as excellent and finely tuned. It's just as hard to make something that's this good and entertaining
Yeah.
as it is to make, whatever super artsy movie. So, yeah.
There's as much artistic merit to something like This Is Spinal Tap as there is
Hmm.
to The Conformist or Persona or something. You know,
Exactly. Yep.
it might not seem that way, but we're here to make the argument today that all of those movies, exist within the same level of artistic merit, or at least deserve to be like celebrated with the same sort of fervor. Uh, but before we get into This Is Spinal Tap, I think there's one other pretty exciting thing, because the first time you were on this show, you joined as just someone who we had met each other through the world of indie film podcasting.
Yeah.
um, but you are now also a contributing writer for ScreenAge Wasteland, the website that
Yeah.
hosts this podcast. And I gotta say, I've been really impressed with your output. You are cranking out reviews like it's nobody's business.
I know. I'm not gonna be able to keep that up, but I've been watching a lot recently, like catching up on some international stuff this month that was recent releases, and it's been sort
Mhm.
of fun to like think through them in a more structured way. But yeah, probably not gonna keep up the output at the level I have been, but I've really enjoyed it. Yeah, so thanks Raf for um passing my resume along, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to have a more formal place to put my writing. So it's been really fun and nice to get to know the screenage people. Yeah,
The
the
well, I think
screenagers is like the
screenagers are
readers. Yeah,
that's the wider
yeah.
community, but then I think Saw contributors is how we
Saw
refer to.
contributors. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, still learning the ropes on the
Yeah,
terms.
still
Yes.
learning all the all the lingo. Yeah, it's amazing having you. I obviously um I got a percentage for bringing you on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, for all the revenue that we're bringing into the site. So that's been a ton of fun.
Yeah.
Getting whatever percent of $0 that we bring in. But it has been great. It has been awesome seeing everything that you've been writing. I'm a fan, and it's cool. It's nice to have a place to you know just really like flesh out your thoughts. It's
It
a it's a great
is.
it's a great site.
It's a nice community, people are great about commenting and giving their thoughts on stuff, so it's been fun to sort of engage with people over there. Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone's like, Brian, your reviews suck, man. I can't believe no, I'm kidding. No one would say that. Uh, um, amazing. So it's almost we're kind of doing too much of the same. We've both got podcasts about lists of great movies. We're both contributing to Screenage Wasteland. It's we're becoming the same person.
We might be. Yeah, we
Yeah.
might be. Or a
uh,
little. So are you are you more Christopher Guest or are you more Michael McKean in this
that's a
toxic partnership?
I feel like I'm more What is it? Smalls? Is that the bass player, the bassist?
Yeah, Derek
Yeah,
Smalls.
Derek
He's
Smalls.
so good, man.
He's amazing. This okay. We spoke about it a little bit before, but I am like was kind of kicking myself after watching this for like not having seen it, before this viewing. And also I'll add in for like a bit more context that I hadn't really gotten into like any Christopher Guest stuff until the last like 2 or 3 years. And
Mm.
when I saw Best in Show and Waiting for Guffman, I was like, these are some of the funniest movies I've ever seen. Somehow that never led me to Spinal Tap, even though like I kind of knew that it would really, just be another thing that I would totally love. Brian, when did you first come across Spinal Tap? Was this like part of your like those movies that like shape your like comedic sensibilities
Yeah.
when you're like pretty young? Was this something like that for you?
It was not. No, I came to it in my late 20s, so probably about 5 years ago. Princess Bride very much was
Mhm.
very formative and early, movie watching and humor forming movie for me, but this was later, and I feel like sometimes when you come to a movie like this late in your movie watching journey, it
Mhm.
doesn't resonate as much because I mean, we grew up with, The Office and those Christopher Guest movies that you talked about. So we're used to like the mockumentary format, the talking heads, and so we've like seen all the influences, and sometimes when you're going back to something that was like a very prominent early example that sort of popularized it, it doesn't hit the same way because you've seen all of the reference points already. And so
Mhm.
it doesn't feel as fresh. But this really did stand out the first watch through of just um, a couple of things that I'm sure we'll get into. But it was amazing, I thought, and what jumped on revisiting it because I hadn't seen it again since that first viewing a little while ago.
It's Yeah, it is interesting coming to it, like, having all of the previous knowledge or the knowledge of, like, everything that has come since. Like, you mentioned The Office and the other Christopher Guest movies, and, um, I guess there must be a bunch of other mocku like, the Andy Samberg mockumentary that is,
Yeah,
like, very much so
yeah.
pulling from this a lot. But
That's
there's
Pop
some
Star Never Stop, Never Stopping.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Amazing movie, like, actually a hilarious movie.
Oh, I
I
should
just
have
love
thought of
Andy
that for
Samberg.
my recommendations. I might swap it in if you have one of the same ones as I do.
Yeah,
So we'll see.
there might be some overlap.
Yeah.
The there's something, there's like a sincerity to this movie that I feel like a lot of mockumentaries don't have, like th The Office or even, like, Best in Show, where it feels like it is very much so mocking the fictional people that the movie is about, where this one feels like it has, like, like there's, like, a weird, like, care for for the band
Yeah.
that comes through that, like, I don't know if that I don't know, it kinda, like, adds to the humor of of the movie. I don't know if that's necessarily what you picked up on or if you just
Yeah.
thought that, like, it's such a strong template for this format that it still worked for you.
There is a sense of, I mean, you get the main documenter who's played by the director of the movie, Rob Reiner. You get a sense of like he is a big fan of this band, and that
Mhm.
comes through. There's also a sense of like it is like poking fun at them, but it's very much because they're like sort of has-beens. They've, had their moment of fame and used to be great, used to be able to sell out arenas and are on sort of their last legs where it's time to call it quits, but they're not willing to admit it yet. And
Yeah.
so there is this sort of like almost sadness or reverence for what has been that infuses the movie with a little more of like we're not just like straight up making fun of these people because this used to be like a thing and they used to be like these great rock stars and it's just sort of fallen apart towards the end of their careers.
Yeah. Did Are you a big, like, classic rock guy in general?
So, not this era of rock as much,
You're
but
not
the
a hair metal
Beatles
guy?
sort of stuff, yes, very much. But no, not once we get into like the Styx or the Journey or Guns N' Roses sort of stuff,
Yeah, you're sort
I'm
of
not
out.
quite as into it. Yeah.
Are you like Beatles through like Zeppelin, Stones,
Yeah,
maybe a
that
little
sort
Pink
of
Floyd,
stuff.
like a little
And
prog
then
rock?
yeah, well, more so I was into, like, indie rock in high school, and so those are the touchstones, like the Radiohead and,
Okay.
um, into, like, the Black Keys sort of stuff. So those are, like,
Yeah.
my rock touchstones for, like, when I was really into music and when I was growing up, and then you go
Mhm.
back and do, like, the classics of the '60s, Beatles, Stones, sort of thing. So yeah, those are mostly my touchstones, but I do sort of skip over this like '70s and '80s period a little bit and the type of
Okay.
stuff that I've been interested in.
I was curious because I was wondering how much, like, your relationship to the music that this is kind of, or the musicians that this is sort of, like, poking fun at,
Mhm.
um, like, how into those kinds of bands you were, because I feel like that definitely will change someone's reading of the
Well,
movie.
Well, I am a musician as well, and so there are a lot of, like, sorta inside musician gags where if you've played a guitar and you
Mhm,
can sorta, like, pick up on some of the stuff that they're doing is really funny. So, a couple of them that I clocked, like, in the famous, like, "Amp Goes to 11" scene,
mhm.
earlier in that scene, he's picking up and showing
I was
off
gonna
a
see how long
guitar
it would take us to before, uh
before we reference that? Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Great scene,
Yeah.
and iconic punchline, of course. Earlier in that scene, though, he holds up a guitar and is showing it up, and it has 3 double humbucker pickups, which is just never a combination that you'd see. It's just sort of like a nonsensical, like, why do you have that many pickups on
Okay.
your guitar?
That's
Um,
so that's not something that I'm not a
no.
musician, I, like, have,
You
like, no musical gifts whatsoever,
you could have 3 singles, you could
mhm.
have 2 doubles, but 3 doubles is just like there's no reason that you'd
Yeah.
have that basically. And then another really funny one that I clocked in Christopher Guest's guitar solo scene, which is hilarious, the
Yeah.
entire thing. But towards the end when he's like soloing on one guitar and then kicking another guitar to get sounds. And he picks up a violin and is strumming the violin across the strings of his electric guitar, which is hilarious by itself. But then there's this little moment that I clocked where he reaches for the tuning knob of the violin and cranks it just slightly, which
Yeah.
is something that like a good guitarist would be able to hear, oh, this particular string is out of tune and like just quickly reach and tweak it a little bit to get it to sound better. So that's something that like guitarists would be familiar with. But to do it on the violin that you're strumming across the strings of your electric guitar, it's not like really actually producing any meaningful sound other than noise.
Yeah.
It's just these guys just know music so well, and so they include these little like inside musician gags that are just so funny. But then, like, if you don't catch them, there's like plenty other stuff to enjoy
Mhm.
here. So yeah, it's just made with such like love and care towards musicians of this era. And I do think there is a reverence for like these 70s and 80s bands that it's sort of spoofing.
Mhm.
That comes across and it does have sort of like this genuine feeling about it.
So the what I thought the joke was there, I thought it was a direct reference to, like, when Jimmy Page would take out, like, a violin bow and, like, play the guitar with that on stage, and, like,
Oh,
okay,
certainly. Yeah.
instead of that, we'll just play it with the full violin, but that additional joke is so funny. I don't know if this is true, but are these guys musicians? I don't know Christopher Guest to be a musician, and I'm not familiar with like some of who's the guy who plays the lead singer.
That's Michael McKean,
Okay.
who listeners may know from Better Call Saul. He had a pretty prominent
Hmm.
part there. Um, and he's been a character actor since. He's been in some other stuff. But this and Better Call Saul are probably the things he is best known for.
And so was he a musician before, or do you think that like
I think these
between the
guys are
two of them?
musicians. I think they're actually playing this stuff. Like, this is a very low budget movie, and the quality of the music here is outstanding. Like, it sometimes you get into movies like this and it's like, okay, they didn't quite nail the music, but the jokes are funny, and so you sort of go along with it for that. But like every time they're playing music on screen, it's just like magnetic. uh the quality of the sound is like almost comparable to like the bands that they're parodying to some degree. Of like, the music is genuinely that good, but
Yeah.
then they're doing these sort of bits during the performances, or there's like a central theme to the song that's really silly, or whatever it is. But the music is very like, it just like is fun to listen to throughout the
Yeah.
movie. It's just like really strong.
I was really surprised by that fact that the music is like that the songs, yes, they're very silly. The lyrics are extremely goofy in all of the best ways, but like they kind of work as rock songs, like
Yeah.
especially like of this era, which I don't want to, disparage like not to say that these guys aren't actual musicians, but like the you know, right, that's kind of like the thing with sort of like hair metal, like 80s kind of rock is
Yeah.
that a lot of it was like the most watered down version of
Yeah.
of what the music can be. So it's like easy as a sort of like genre or like a period of time within
Yeah.
the genre of rock music like to make fun of, which I
And
think is
it's
part of
all
why the
yeah.
movie works.
It's all performance, and these are actors, so they can do the performance piece of it and be like rock stars. And then also, I think they're genuinely like taking some care to be good musicians, or have like the music knowledge to actually pull this off. But yeah, it does. And then there's some like the earlier, when you see the songs that are earlier that are sort of spoofing the Beatles style of
Mhm.
stuff, or going on Ed Sullivan's show, of like, that stuff is also like pretty strong and is entirely a different style. So it's just impressive that they were able to pull all of this off.
It is super, and that kinda goes to, like, the care of the movie, and that it's not just making fun of it because they did take the time to actually, like, craft songs that work as songs from this era of music or, like, previous eras of music, when they were doing, like, the early Beatles stuff. So if it was just, like, really, really crappy music, or if we could tell that it wasn't these guys actually, like, creating or playing the music, then it wouldn't have the jokes wouldn't have the same effect. Like, they wouldn't land the same way.
Exactly. Yep. So the other thing, once you get it, like the first couple of songs, are pretty straightforward music performances with some like funny jokes. I mean, uh the first sequence that really like sold me on this movie being great is like the Big Bottom song, where they're all just like shaking their butts on stage. I just
Yeah.
find that really funny. But they are like at first sort of genuine performances, and the tour seems to be going like moderately well, but
Mhm.
then it starts to devolve, and you get s- some of the funniest performance sequences, like three in a row, that are just like the funniest things that could possibly happen on a stage. The first one is our guy Harry Shearer, the
Mhm.
bass player, his pod won't open.
Yeah.
And they try to like sledgehammer it open, but he's just like his bass, he can't hold his bass to the side because he's in this like little pod, so he's just holding it upright and playing the song the whole time. So funny. And then there's the Stonehenge one, which is very famous and
Yeah.
really, really funny. Um and then and then it gets even worse from there once Christopher Guest quits the band. Of they do this like performance of this new direction, and the girlfriend, the Yoko Ono character Janine, is on stage with a tambourine and displaying like no musical talent whatsoever.
Is
They're
that
just like,
before or after they go into their, like, jazz rock sort of, like, jam band
yeah, that's the
kind of
one.
vibe? Is
That's
that the same one?
jazz, yeah, jazz rock jam band. She's on stage with the tambourine and like a headband, and it's yeah, it's
Yeah. Is
very
this
like Grateful Dead.
Yeah. It definitely doesn't predate the Grateful Dead, but very much so. Um, kind of maybe not Grateful Dead, I feel like they're not as jazzy in their
Might
jamming,
not be. Yeah.
but, that felt very like String Cheese Incident or like Fish, like those kinds of jam
Exactly.
bands.
Yeah.
Yeah. The it's going back to like these guys being actual musicians and
Yeah.
how that plays into what the movie is able to do. I did see a few things where like apparently Sting was like so moved by this movie because he felt like such a deep connection to it, but then Steven Tyler of Aerosmith like hated it because probably because he saw a lot of himself and his band within the movie. So it's really interesting to just to have like those two different artists like
Yeah.
react to it so so differently. Uh as someone who has played who plays guitar and like as a musician, did you like where do you fall on that spectrum? Are you more Sting or Steven Tyler?
I think I'm more Sting, and I think it is because like Steven Tyler's brand of music is a little closer here
Mhm.
than Sting's. So I think it's funnier to poke fun when you're not feeling like you're the one being poked fun at. But yeah, I'm sure, so I see it as a very like loving portrayal of this
Mhm.
kind of music. I think there's genuine affection for not only, the type of music, but also these characters. So I do respond to that here where it's not just, uh I do like a movie that's, like, completely acidic and just tearing something down from time to time, but I also
Yeah.
like something like this that has some genuine heart behind, the barbs.
Yeah. I mean, something like Popstar, which is hilarious, I think it is a bit more mean-spirited in terms of, like, the subject matter and who it's making fun of. I
Yeah.
even something like Dewey Cox, I think is a little bit more mean-spirited in terms of, who it's portraying and who it's making fun of. Even The Office, like, as, like,
Oh,
the
yeah.
big standard sort of, like, uh, big, broad monoculture kind of, like, version of mockumentaries that we all know. I even think that that is, like, a little mean-spirited in terms of, like, how it is portraying the people that it's portraying and, like, doesn't actually, like, love them in the way that the makers of This Is Spinal Tap love the members of Spinal Tap and, like, everything around them as musicians.
Yeah, I think that, that rings true for me. Yeah. I think that the creators of some of those things that you mentioned do think that they sort of love the characters, but then it's just such a tricky balance to find in general of like when do you poke fun or make a joke? When is too far and is a little too mean and sacrificing the actual care that the audience feels for the characters or the empathy or identification with them, and when is it okay for a laugh. So if
Yeah,
you can walk that line as well as this movie does, then you're in really good shape.
absolutely. And a lot of the credit is it has to go to Rob Reiner. Obviously, Christopher Guest like really takes the reins and becomes like the sort of standard for mockumentary filmmaking going
Yeah.
forward, and definitely cut his teeth here. But I think Rob Reiner is a weird figure in filmmaking where he both gets way too much credit, but also not enough credit as
Yeah.
a filmmaker. What are your thoughts on like him in general as a filmmaker and sort of like where this fits in? Obviously, as like his like first feature film, but just fits into like the rest of his filmography because I don't think there's no one has had more of a stranglehold on like a specific demo than
Mhm.
Rob Reiner had on younger baby boomers.
Yeah, it's crazy. This run really 8-year run, maybe you'd say it goes a little bit further, but um 8 movies, at least 4 of these are in the canon and maybe 5
Mhm.
or 6. Goodness. Um so this is Spinal Tap as first. The Sure Thing isn't as well loved. That's sort of his follow-up, but by accounts. I haven't seen it, but it seems to be pretty decent, but just
Mhm.
not, not a classic. Um, and then he rattles off Stand By Me, The
Mhm.
Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, Misery, and A Few Good Men all in a row,
Yeah.
which is like the most insane run a director's ever had.
What is
That
that,
is
5
just
movies or is that 6
nuts.
movies?
That's so if you include This Is Spinal Tap and The Sure Thing, that would be 7 movies, of which, like, 6 are
Yeah.
stone cold classics. I mean, maybe you'd say, like, Misery to the uninitiated isn't a stone cold
Yeah.
classic as
But it's in the
much, but
canon.
it's in the canon, and when you watch that thing, you're like, "Okay, this is a master at work." And all of those movies are so different. You got, like,
Mhm.
rom-com with When Harry Met Sally, you've got like pure Oscar drama and A Few Good Men, you've got the mockumentary comedy of Spinal Tap, you've got the coming of age and Stand By Me. It's just yeah, so I think it might be like you said, he's not quite as recognized because he doesn't have as distinctive a style where he's jumping around a little bit and doing a lot of
Mhm.
different stuff. He's also working very heavily with actors who are very involved, and so maybe they take a little bit of the shine off of him,
Mhm.
where they're getting recognition for their performances, Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men, or um, you know, Meg Ryan and Billy Crystal and When Harry Met Sally and all of
Mhm.
that. So I think you get a little bit of like, well, um, there's not as much recognition of his contribution because from movie to movie, there's no like stylistic thread that you'd say, this is what makes a Rob Reiner movie, except a wonderful sense of humor throughout, um, and just a great understanding of what makes an entertaining movie that people will enjoy. And
Yeah.
so he's just so good and dialed in at that from the get-go that yeah, he I think is a little underappreciated for his contributions, though the movies themselves I think have received the proper acclaim for how good they are.
There in addition to he doesn't have a distinct style, and he also doesn't have a distinct, like, thematic through line. He's not like a PTA or Spielberg where you're like, "Wow, this dude hates his dad," and no
Yeah.
matter what genre he's working in or, like, what the movie is about, I get that, you know? I get that this is a filmmaker who hates their dad or, you know, whatever it is. So there's no, like, "Oh, like, that's such a Rob Reiner aesthetic," or, like, "That shot selection was so Rob Reiner," or whatever. He makes extremely he's extremely good at understanding, like you said, how to make something that, like, is entertaining and moves so effortlessly. Um, I, like, don't wanna just say that it's all, like, very competent filmmaking, but, like, I can't even, like, put my finger on what it is exactly that he's able to do, where all of his movies move so effortlessly, and, like,
Yeah.
they entertain on a mass level, which is a very hard thing to do because his movies aren't it's not like they're bad and just, like, lowest common denominator kind of entertaining. There is a level of artistic integrity in terms of, like,
Mhm.
what he's making, but it just all seems so effortless. It's like
Yeah.
it's kinda remarkable.
It's humor and heart. You know, he's got those 2 elements that he's playing off of, and a really strong understanding of how those interplay with characters and their arcs, and so it's just good, like, fundamental, um, you know, blockbuster movie making that, um, is just, astounding to watch, and the consistency is also really remarkable. Yeah.
It's wonderful, and it's great that this is the one that that kicked everything off.
Yeah.
Because this
Yep.
I mean, this really could have been a disaster of a movie, right? I think we spoke
Yep.
about it a little bit, but this is kind of really the template for mockumentaries. I
Mhm.
Is there anything that did come before this that you are aware of? Because I'm
Mhm.
sure there were things, but this definitely, like, was
Yeah.
used as the template.
So one predecessor, not nearly as popular, and this does some different things, but, there's an Albert Brooks movie called Real Life, and our friend, Harry Shearer, the bass player,
Mhm,
was the co-writer of that movie and of Spinal Tap. So you've got a little bit of a through line where he sort of seems to have cut his teeth with Albert Brooks on that movie, which I think is excellent as well.
mhm,
Not a music mockumentary, but very much a mockumentary, and it's almost like a extreme home makeover sort of thing. But Albert Brooks is like coming in and it, thinking he's fixing people's lives, but actually destroying them. So very funny. And so you've got that, but it doesn't have the music. It doesn't
mhm.
have the talking head interview style. It's very much just like their cameras documenting things as they're happening. Almost more like Truman Show concept as well. Um,
Interesting.
so that's a little different and distinct. And then
Mhm,
this, just with the way that it popularizes this sort of thing, I think is its own ball of wax. So this does you can point to other comps as well. I did wonder, was there anything else beyond those ones that I had seen? And I saw some other things that had done a bit of the same thing, but nothing that it like has stood the test of time or that I'd recognized otherwise, in the same way.
yeah. This this totally feels like it is the reason for mockumentaries existing sort of in the way that they exist today, but it did even though this was a super popular movie,
Mhm.
a movie that audiences, generally enjoy and, like, find funny, it still seems like it took some time for mockumentaries to, like, really become a thing in
Yeah.
pop culture. Like, there's not much that I can think of really between
Mhm.
this and, like, the later Christopher Guest movies, and then obviously after those Christopher Guest movies, you get, like, a lot more TV shows that are operating within the realm of, mockumentaries, and that really seem to, like,
Yeah.
blow up uh, in a lot of ways, maybe a little too much, but,
Yeah.
it is it does all sort of come back to this, but it's interesting that there weren't, like, more This Is Spinal Tap ripoffs in, like, the latter half of the '80s.
I think it's because you come out with something that's so popular and iconic, and people sort of hesitate to be seen as a pale imitation of that
Mhm.
for a while. But then, like, someone tries it and it's good and it comes off well, and then it sort of builds. The same sort of thing happened with found footage movies after Blair Witch, which is sort of a
Yeah.
similar comp where there'd been some found footage stuff beforehand. Blair Witch, indie movie, completely blew up and made it a thing. And then you get a while before you get into like the VHS or those
Like
sort of the
Paranormal
visit or
Activity. Yeah.
paranormal activity, those sorts of things. So you get this like little gap where like you're giving the classic movie its space because you don't want to come off as a lesser imitation.
Yeah.
And then it starts to become clear that like this is a format that works for a reason, and
Mhm.
people are able to riff on it maybe for like a new generation or new audience once everyone, once it's been 10 years and the young people haven't seen the thing that you're imitating.
That definitely adds to the legend of a movie like this. The
Oh
fact
yeah.
that there was that gap. And it could go either way, where it's like something like this comes around and it like totally knocks everyone's socks off, and there are a bunch of cheap imitators out there, and you're like, yeah, this totally influenced, the next whatever 10, 15 years of filmmaking. Or it's like this came around, it was like so new, it was so fresh, knocked everyone's socks off, that people were like, oh, we're not going to try to replicate that for like 10 years because we're not going to be able to do it as well as that movie did it. uh Brian, we've been talking for so long, and I feel like everyone is just here to listen to us list off our favorite bits, our favorite gags within the movie,
Okay,
which
yeah.
we haven't done. What to you are some of like the funniest moments, some of the best jokes from This Is Spinal Tap?
Okay, so do you want like the really iconic ones, which are all like as funny as people think they are, or do
Do
you
you?
want
I
the
want
like
I want your favorites.
deep
Do you have a
tracks?
top 5 or a top 3 that you
Ooh.
could list from third favorite to first favorite?
Third favorite to first favorite. So,
I would say 5, but
look
that's
through my
probably too much.
look
But there,
through my notes here.
yeah.
Um, I'll name three favorites in no order. Three
Okay,
favorites
that's
in
that's
no order.
perfect.
Maybe
Yeah,
I'll order them once I get to the end of talking about them because I
and
might
you'll
have
be
stronger
yeah.
feelings. We'll see. I do like making lists. I like ordering things. Um,
We're both big
so
list guys.
yeah, but off the top of my head is a lot of pressure, so I might crumble under it. Okay, so um, the um, the drummer's constantly dying for different reasons, and particularly the part where he says like the police said it would be better left unsolved.
Was that the one who died in the gardening accident?
Yes.
My favorite joke from the dying drummer's bit was when they were like, he choked on vomit, and then someone just adds in, it was someone else's vomit.
Someone else. That was so good. Oh gosh. Yeah, so that one. I'll throw in the violin, like tuning very quickly the violin while
Mhm.
doing the guitar solo. Maybe just that whole guitar solo in general
Yeah.
is so funny. Oh gosh. So that'll be number 2 for me. And then number 3 is the most classic and iconic, this amp goes to 11 thing, but it's because of the line that sets up the last punchline. The way Rob Reiner says is like, couldn't you just make 10 louder? Like the
Yeah.
way he explains that in such a concise way of why this amp going to 11 is so dumb.
Yeah.
Just and then Christopher Guest just completely doesn't get it. This one goes to 11.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'll do this one go to 11 as 3 because it mm, yeah, is is very widely recognized and doesn't need any more flowers than it's already gotten. And
Mhm.
then I'll do number 2 as the guitar solo, and number 1 as the police said it would be better left unsolved. Cracks me up
The,
so much for some
the
reason.
payoff for the dying drummers bit was, like, so obvious and telegraphed from so far away, and I somehow still didn't pick up on, like, that was going to happen at some point in the movie, and when it finally does happen, because it was so obvious and, like, so silly, I was dying. I thought it was
Yeah.
like, of course, that's how this movie is going to is ending right now, like, they
Yeah.
have to get a new drummer,
Yeah.
otherwise, that joke, it wouldn't make sense to have, set it up the way that they were setting it up.
Yeah,
Um
certainly.
2 more that I will
Yeah.
throw in, although, like, the whole movie is just, like, a series of amazing bits and amazing gags. The
Yeah.
the airport metal detector killed me, absolutely killed me. I think mostly because the punchline of it being wrapped in aluminum foil is, like, so silly because, like, you can avoid that entire awkward situation if you just don't wrap your pants cucumber in aluminum foil. If you wrap it in anything else, you get through the metal detector at the airport without the embarrassment.
It is so good.
Like,
Uh,
absolutely amazing stuff.
I was
I
thinking
think
it
that's
was some sort of piercing, and
yeah,
then, yeah, the cucumber is a great reveal.
it's an amazing reveal. These s I think a lot of the jokes, they, like, sort of, like, end in obvious ways, but then there's, like, a slight twist on them
Mhm.
that makes them, like, that much funnier. Like, of course, these silly rock stars are stuffing their pants with socks or cucumbers or whatever it may be to, enhance their genitalia or whatever. But then the idea that, like, still we're doing it in the airport and it's a cucumber wrapped in aluminum foil. Like, it just it's it's the, like, dumbest version of
Yeah,
what it could be.
yeah.
Um, and then speaking of, just absolutely stupid humor, which, I love as a stupid guy, stupid humor really speaks to me.
Mhm.
The bit about the bread being too small within the green room was hysterical to me,
That was really good. Yeah, that was
as
really
was
good.
I'll throw one more into the mix that I thought was just great. Getting lost on the way to the stage.
That was really good. They come back around to the guy who gave them directions.
Yeah.
Oh, that was really good. Yeah. And then my bonus one will be their album cover that you never I don't think you ever actually see what the concept was. You just hear them describe the concept.
Yeah.
And then they get indignant because this other guy had a similarly like sexual content album cover, but then they realized that the reason his flew and theirs didn't was because he was the one being degraded instead of the women. It's
Is that
like,
when they have the
oh,
line?
okay, it's okay if the man, the artist is being degraded, but if the artists are degrading the women, then it's not
Then
okay.
it's not
Oh,
okay.
okay. It's like this dawning of realization of like that wouldn't be obvious to you. Goodness.
Is that where the line, "There's a thin line between clever and stupid,"
Yeah. Yep.
which is kind of the thesis of the movie.
Yep. Yep. It
Everything
definitely is.
everything that they're doing as a band is so stupid, but they, like, think that it's clever, but they never really cross that threshold. But the
Mhm.
movie itself, in highlighting their stupidity, becomes like a clever movie
Mhm.
in a weird way. So yeah, that line, like, I feel like it perfectly sums everything up. And then obviously when they see the actual album cover and they're asking how much more black can it get? And I think it's Christopher Guest who says none,
None
none
blacker.
more black. Um,
He is so funny. I think he's the funniest person in this movie. Yeah, his sense of humor and comedic timing is unrivaled. It's really excellent. They're all
yeah,
really good, but man, he
few
just
people
pops
can
off.
play a fool
Yeah.
like Christopher Guest.
Yeah. He is. He does come off as like the dumbest one.
Mhm. But in a very, very, very endearing way. He plays
Definitely.
a lovable dumbass, like, as good as anyone. I think we're, like, around the same age, so we probably grew up on, like,
Mhm.
same kinds of movies, like the, like, Will Ferrell, like, Ben Stiller, those kinds of comedies, maybe a little bit like
Definitely.
Seth Rogen on the tail end.
Mhm.
And there are a lot of peoples with the, or a lot of people rather within those sort of like comedic circles that will often play a dumbass. Steve Carell, like, will oftentimes play a dumbass, whether it be
Mhm.
Michael Scott or his character in Anchorman, but they're like not as endearing as what Christopher Guest is able to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Brick from Anchorman is pretty dang endearing, so that's maybe comparable, but the other, yeah, Steve Carell, maybe not so much. Um, I wonder, I feel like we've a little bit recently lost the dumb comedy side of things. And then, and it'd been like a good like 5 years of it getting like less popular. And then I think you should leave hit. And that sort
Mm,
of like made it explode again of like, yeah, we can like just have fun laughing at dumb jokes again. And so
yeah.
I wonder if we're gonna see a little bit of a resurgence as a result um, of that sort of humor.
Are you a
Yeah,
big I think you should leave fan?
I am. Yeah, I think it's really excellent.
I haven't been able to get into it.
Oh
It's
yeah,
yeah, and I love dumb humor. It feels
yeah.
like a little too um it's like kind of like is it like kind of like absurdist humor in a way?
It is. Yeah. It's really going far with every single bit.
Mhm.
And the Lonely Island guys do that a little bit as well in their movies where they'll, but not every joke. But this is like it's very like if you enjoy this formula of one character like not understanding a social situation and taking that as far as it can
Mhm.
go, then you'll enjoy I think you should leave, but not necessarily a lot of variety. I don't think there needs to be, but I definitely see how like if that particular bit doesn't work for you, it uh might not resonate as much.
Yeah, it is really interesting thinking about, like, the kind of comedy that this is, and I feel like, obviously, in 2025, there are a lot of one of the conversations around popular media is the fact that there aren't as many comedy movies,
Hmm.
as there once were, and a lot of people pine for, again, those, like, Judd Apatow kind of comedies, which I have enjoyed many of those, but I do think that a lot of those are, like, a bit more mean-spirited in the kind of humor
Yeah,
that they're, like, celebrating. It's very, like, exclusionary, in
yeah,
terms of, like, who is allowed to laugh and, like, what it is that we're laughing at. And, like, even though, right, like, This Is Spinal Tap is a movie about a band of British dudes, British rock musicians, like, it doesn't feel like it has that same sort of, like, exclusivity. I think it's, like, aware of the maybe sort of, like, messed up gender, race relations that, like,
hmm,
that group has to the rest of the world in a weird way, not to talk about, like, or bring it to the social dynamics of This
yeah.
Is Spinal Tap, because I don't think anyone really wants to talk about that, but it is kind of interesting that, like, a movie like this, um, can exist in those ways and, like, it still doesn't feel very mean-spirited. I don't know if you have any thoughts
Yeah.
on that.
Well, I think that's a really good point. The in the same way that like action movies have escalated over time where you got to see like more action, faster pace, crazier stuff, more CGI over time. Um and I think we're seeing a little bit of a reset of that, of like, maybe we don't just need more, maybe we need better.
Mhm. Yeah.
um and then I think the same thing, and this is just dawning on me because of what you just said. The same thing has happened in some ways with comedy, where it's become more and more mean spirited. What people would think of as like edgier comedy, or
Mhm.
we're gonna do more hard R comedy. Um, and so you get like, starting with this is Spinal Tap, which is like pretty innocuous,
Yeah.
and then you get into like the Will Ferrell stuff, and then into the Judd Apatow stuff that's like edging up the edginess a little bit, and then you get The Hangover, which is even a little bit further, and so you get, and Super Bad and all of those, and great movies, but you
Mhm.
do get this like, how far can you really go before like we need like a reset, or to stop just like amping it up and start thinking about like, what's actually funny, what's the root of the joke here, and like
Yeah.
what can we, and bring in like that empathy piece, and actual like love and care about the characters, that really makes the humor land in a different way. So yeah, that's a really good point. I've never thought about it that way.
But you did just articulate it in, like, the best way possible.
I don't know about that, but
I think the comparison to action movies and just, like, right, like, just, like, more and more as opposed to sitting back and thinking about, like, what is it about these jokes that makes them funny, you know?
Mhm.
I think w there are only a few comedy movies that are within the canon. We did Monty Python and the Holy Grail maybe
Love it.
a year
5-star
ago,
masterpiece.
which
Yep.
yeah, a masterpiece, and, like, it's again, not a very mean-spirited kind of comedy, and I think part of it might be there is, like, a fine line of, like, having just, like, crude and, like, dumb characters, and the joke being that the characters are dumb, that like makes it a bit of a softer blow, or like makes it like doesn't it's not as mean spirited, like you're not just like using these
Yeah.
characters to be crude. um like the joke is that these guys are so dumb that when they're talking about the album cover and someone says it's sexist, and one of them goes, yeah, it is sexy, like that's
Yeah.
funny. That's the joke, is that he's so dumb that he doesn't realize like how absurd the
Yeah.
album cover that they're trying to release is. It's funny that Christopher Guest's character doesn't realize that like the bread in the green room doesn't need to be any bigger. Like that is that is the joy, that they are just like these like simple dumb guys, and it's not
Yeah.
that they're like unleashing this like
Mhm.
uh this like wreaking havoc on the world. They're
Mhm.
just really really harmless dumb dudes.
Yeah. There's also an aspect, I think, to why this lands, of like, these are people in power, these are
Mhm.
people who have achieved fame, stardom, have, earned a lot of money, have the lifestyles that maybe they desired. And so like, poking fun at them doesn't feel quite as like mean as maybe like, even in like The Office, you're poking fun at like this middle manager who's really not, it's really like sad that he hasn't been able to find like a romantic partner that he really wants, and all of this stuff. So
Mhm.
it's like, it does have this like sadness, and I think The Office, to its credit, does understand that and get you to feel empathy for that, but you're also still like poking fun at those people. So like, when you're making a movie like this, you've got to find the right people to sort of poke fun at, and that it ends up being a little bit more of a satirical bent, of like, gets you to think about, these people who are very famous and have, like you said, like, don't know the word sexist or what that
Yeah.
means, you know? So, like, it's like, okay, these are okay people to make fun of. We can sort of all laugh at them, and
Ye
then that, like, locates something because it's, like, a really funny joke, and I love when, like, the joke is the point. So, like, the
Mhm,
joke that he doesn't know the word sexist, like, tells you something about, like, the way that people who are very famous or don't have to be accountable for their actions don't engage with the world in a particular way, you know? So,
mhm.
it's just solidly built in that way.
The There's also something about, like, the whole movie being sort of surrounded about by or being about these guys being, like, pretty dumb despite their, success and power and all that, but, like, also there are moments where we understand why they have reached that level of success, like when I think it's, again, the Christopher Guest character who is, playing the piano, and he's like, "Yeah, I was, like, really inspired by Bach and by Mozart. Like I'm a bit of a mock musician." And he's like playing this like really beautiful piano piece, and he's like talking about how D minor is like his favorite key because it makes people weep instantaneously. And he's like, you can tell that he has like this deep knowledge and appreciation for music. And
Yeah.
then the Rob Reiner character is like, so what's the name of the song? And he's like, oh, it's called Lick My Love Pump.
So good. Oh gosh.
So-
Yeah, and then there's also that moment, like, I think it's earlier in the movie, where you get the 2 of them, Christopher Guest and Michael McKean, talking about the first song that they wrote together, and they're
Mhm,
just, like, singing it back and forth and, like, trying to remember the words to it, and it's this really, like, sweet moment of, like, these guys have known each other since, like, they were, you know, children
mhm.
and have grown up together and like discovered music and this like shared passion together in a way. And so it does like deepen your empathy and understanding of these people to have that mixed in where you're getting glimpses of their knowledge of music, their actual love and passion for the thing that they're doing, and for, each other. And it's like changed and evolved in a way. And, anytime you're around anyone for that long, they tend to get on your nerves to some degree. And so you definitely have that with these guys. But there is like this, decades long friendship that's been there.
Yeah, the friendship aspect is really interesting and not something that I gave a lot of thought to, but that is another obviously huge aspect of this movie. Um, and it kind of like what you were saying made me think about what we were talking about before, where this is making fun of a certain type of musician, but it's also like it's not making fun of like one band or like one moment in music history specifically. The relationship between the two main characters and like their roots to like writing songs in their childhood together is very Paul and John. Um,
Yeah.
there's obviously like the Aerosmith sticks kind of like joke about like hair metal and those kinds of bands.
Mhm.
There's like we said the Jimmy Page violin bow joke. So we're poking fun at Led Zeppelin too, and with like they kind of like started all this like over sexualization of rock and roll music.
Mhm.
So there's like a lot of different like bands and like movements within music and like sort of like rock and roll pop music history that there's like equal opportunity for all of them to be made fun of, which
Yeah.
I think that spreading it out, like it makes it makes a lot of the jokes work because it doesn't feel like, okay, we're just doing like a Beatles story, which
Yeah.
like wouldn't be funny on its own. But the fact that they're mixing, all of these different sort of elements in.
Yeah, definitely. It is like it's pretty heavy on the Beatles because you've also got like the Yoko Ono thing with
Mhm.
Janine coming in and like sort of being a wedge between the two main guys. And then but then you get, them essentially reconciling at the end, which is also a really funny scene of like He's like, Michael McKean's like, what are you trying to do by bringing the, you're trying to get us to accept back into the band? And he's like, I'm just delivering the news that I was told, basically. It's so funny the way he says that. It's like, I'm really just a messenger.
It's just, but it ends up being a little rom-commy at the end
It
with
is,
their
yeah.
relationship
And you
specifically.
get that character arc of, like, you see these guys who have been friends, who have played music together for years. You get their backstory, you get, like, the wedge that's driving them apart, and then you get them sort of reuniting at the end of the film. So it does, like, play on the sort of character arc level again, which, like we've said, is like sort of Reiner's hallmark of, like, he understands characters, what makes them tick, and how to tell a story like this to get us to care even while we're laughing at it.
Yeah, that which is a really, really hard thing to do when you're making a movie like this, because it could be really easy to just get bogged down in the bits and the jokes and like the literal, mockumentary format of it all, where you don't,
Hmm.
you know, when you think about a mockumentary, like it doesn't really need to have like doesn't need to have full character arcs or anything like that. So the fact that he's able to like
Hmm.
weave that in to it, I think is a big part of why this movie is as successful and like works
Yeah.
as well as it does.
It's crazy how tight it is. Like, this is 82 minutes. You've got musical performances, like, we've named countless bits, and it's just so consistently funny in, like, a rapid fire way. And then you've also got this, like, character work and story that's going on sort of in the background. It's so, but it doesn't feel like crammed to the gills, even though when you step back and look at it, it sort of is. Like, every scene has a particular purpose that it's trying to accomplish on one of those elements. But it's just incredible.
It's amazing. Before I wanted to ask you about the sequel, but before we
Ooh,
talk
yeah.
about that, is there anything else about This Is Spinal Tap that you want to bring up?
Ooh, I think we got to most of the stuff that I wanted to talk about on the Spinal Tap side of things. I also like, just to mention something we haven't talked about yet, I guess. Their manager, like the manager character,
Yeah.
and the, like, um him trying to appease them while sort of everyone knows that it's not going well is really funny. So, and then he does, like, end up quitting, of like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
So that was really good.
He's a great character. He's a great. I could totally see a version of this movie where it comes out a little bit later, and that is Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah, he does sort of have that vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, of like Philip Seymour Hoffman can play dude who is like in way over his head and is like just trying to like present this air of like being under control, but he just is he's unraveling so hard.
One more scene. I mean, we could stay on forever talking about hilarious scenes in this movie.
Yeah, as
But
we
when
should.
they go to that uh record store, and they're supposed to have this signing, and then no one shows up, and this guy, like, the guy who is supposed to promote them locally, like, on the radio, like, comes up and apologizes, like, way too much, of like, okay, this is like, just apologize and get out of there. Like, take responsibility for it, but don't, like, write them a novel in your apology. Like, that's too much, dude. So, but that whole thing is really funny. And all of the, like, you gradually see over time that, like, this tour is taking a turn for the worse. It's
Yeah.
really carefully, like, step by step, considered throughout the movie, of what needs to be ordered here, of you sort of like realizing that, the direction that this is going in.
Just how much of a disaster it is, and it has
Yeah.
to reach that full blown disaster, right? I think it kind of reaches
Mhm.
that point with, would you say, the Stonehenge?
The Stonehenge is when it becomes, yeah, clear that this is completely unraveling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then the redemption arc of we're big in Japan is just so perfect.
Yeah.
That is the perfect way for it to end. You know,
It's great.
it it,
Yeah.
it it had to either be Japan or Germany. You know, I feel
Yeah.
like that's where where a band like this ends up getting really big, like 15 years later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's great.
perfect. So the sequel was announced what, a couple years ago,
Mhm.
is allegedly coming out this year, or is it coming out next year?
Seems to be coming out this year. We'll see.
Is Rob Reiner back to direct, and is the full band back together? I guess besides the drummer who exploded um, on stage,
Yeah.
which happens to several people every year. I didn't know
Yeah.
that before.
So you got the main 3 guys back. Rob Reiner's back to direct and to star in it, so we're
Mhm.
gonna see him documenting again as well. You've also got, Fran Drescher is in it, who plays Bobby. She is very early in the movie. She's the publicist who gives them the bad news about their, album cover, or I guess gives the
Yeah,
manager the bad news.
yeah,
I thought she was great, so I'm excited to, see her again. She's been in some other stuff as well and has been good, so I'm excited that she is, a part of this as well, so she's sorta hung around. It's launched a bunch of people's careers, and rightfully so.
yeah. This movie did launch a bunch of careers, and like the three main guys. So Michael McKean, he went on to do a lot of great like character acting stuff. Christopher Guest obviously became sort of like the premier mockumentary filmmaker, and
Yeah.
is also married to Jamie Lee Curtis, which is hilarious.
Oh, I didn't know
Apparently,
that.
and apparently she saw him at a party and she was like, "That's the guy," which I totally get. He has
Yeah,
that vibe. Like he has, you know, he has the it factor. And
yeah.
then I'm forgetting the name of the guy who plays Derek Smalls, but he
Harry
apparently went on
Shearer.
Harry Shearer, right? So he went on
Yeah.
to do a bunch of voice acting work, and he was like a bunch of characters, or I guess still
Nice.
is a bunch of characters in The Simpsons. So,
Oh, that's cool.
but then yeah, you also have Fran Drescher. I don't know where Billy Crystal was in his sort of like career arc, but I think this is a pretty early role for him, and then obviously goes on to do a bunch of other stuff with Rob Reiner. Pretty early Fred Willard, who went on to do a bunch of stuff with Christopher Guest. So yeah, definitely a lot of
And
like,
shows up in, like, every sitcom,
yeah,
every sitcom you could think of,
he's
he's
in at least
playing it.
one episode of I
Yeah,
think every sitcom that has come
yeah,
out between 1986 and
yeah.
2014.
Also in Anchorman. He's great in
Yeah,
Anchorman.
he
Yeah.
is great at Anchorman. Um, do you know what the like plot synopsis of the sequel is? I think we don't have a trailer yet, but it was announced recently that
Mhm.
we would be getting a trailer very soon.
I do not, and I usually try to stay if I know I'm gonna see something, which since Rob Reiner's back, I'll see this for
Mhm.
sure. Um, and, like, of the legacy sequel type of things that you can do, doing a legacy sequel for a band that was already about, like, has-beens, it's just so perfect to bring them back, like, 40 years later and
Yeah,
see them do, like, a reunion tour or whatever. You're spoofing the very thing that you're doing in a really fun way. So I'm excited to see what they do. So I've sort of stayed away from any details about this other than just being excited to see it and confirming that all of the people that I knew from the first one are on board and going to be a part of it.
amazing. I also don't know what it's about or anything of that sort, but I'm sure it'll be great. I'm also usually not a fan of legacy sequels, but this one for some reason doesn't feel like a cold, empty sort of like cash grab in the way that a lot of legacy sequels sort of do. This feels
Yeah.
like I don't know. I trust the crew behind
Yeah.
this movie to, like, do it because they, like, thought of, like, some really funny bits, and they just wanted to share that
Yeah.
with the world.
Generally, if like the creative people behind it are back and want to share more about it, then I'm okay with it. It does tend to be lesser returns, but
Mhm,
like I don't mind it. It's not a huge like the I can't believe it. I don't feel real precious about like preserving the legacy by not making more.
mhm.
There are things like, I don't know if you're an Arrested Development fan, but it's a TV
No.
show that I love. And definitely, like, they did 3 amazing seasons and then it got canceled, and that was one of the first where they, like, brought it back for season 4, and then
Mhm.
many years later for another season. It was very much diminishing returns, but now just when I rewatch it, I just stop after season 3. Not a big deal. So,
There you go.
if you make more and it's not good, just don't watch it
That's
anymore. It doesn't ruin what came before unless the movie is called Rise of Skywalker.
there are really, really, really cynical versions of it, of legacy sequels,
Yeah.
but a lot of
Just
I'm
don't
not
watch them, you know?
I'm not the biggest fan
Yeah.
of Top Gun: Maverick, but I get why they made it.
Yeah.
I thought the Beetlejuice sequel was made for the right reasons because Tim Burton wanted to make a particular kind of movie, and it just so happened that, like, telling that story within the world of Beetlejuice made sense. I didn't love it, but like you're saying, it doesn't, like, ruin the legacy of Beetlejuice for me, like, I can still
Yeah.
go watch Beetlejuice and have a great time. Um, so if This Is Spinal Tap 2 kinda sucks or, like, isn't the most amazing thing in the world, we can always, always return to the
Yeah.
original and have an absolute riot.
Yeah.
Um,
I never saw Zoolander 2. I never saw Trainspotting 2. Um, Anchorman 2 I thought was fine, pretty good. Not something that I'd revisit, but good enough. Um, to be fun, revisiting those characters and being back in that world.
yeah, you're a big
Um,
fan of all the Ghostbuster sequels though, right?
I've not seen any of the Ghostbusters sequels.
That everyone tells me that that's your jam, that you are.
Like I said at the top, like Hannah and I were really not, franchise people.
Mhm.
We're sticking with the like, let's find the new stuff that's an original story that's told well. So that's really what we gravitate towards in general. I don't
Like, This
mind.
Is Spinal Tap.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I love it. Well, this has been an absolute blast. Very fun.
Yeah.
I think we can do some recommendations for This Is Spinal Tap. I feel like these will also be very fun. So, Brian, you know the deal. I know the deal. We're recommending 3 things to check out. If folks like This Is Spinal Tap, at least one has to be another movie, but the other 2 can be any and everything else. More movies, books, TV shows, video games, albums, uh, really anything that we want. Any movies that we recommend can't be in the canon. So, like, every Rob Reiner movie is off limits because all that that dude does is make movies that are canon worthy. But
Yeah.
everything else is fair game. So, whenever you're ready, you can give your first recommendation and a brief little overview for why it is that you're recommending it.
All right. Well, I'm gonna hold off on one of them, so I gotta rearrange my order here because if you recommend it, then I'm gonna switch it to Pop Star Never Stop, Never Stopping. Um,
One of the best
but
names, one of the
it's
best
so
titles for
great.
any movie. Yeah.
It's so great. Okay, so all 3 of my recommendations are music mockumentaries. I wanted to theme it because of how great this movie is and
Mhm.
kicked off several other great movies that are like this. This first one was released last year. Raph, I don't know if you've seen this, but I think you would love it. It's called Rap World. Are you familiar
Okay.
with Rap World at all?
No, I've not seen it.
Okay. It's on YouTube. It's an hour long. It's made by Connor O'Malley, who I think got his start on Vine and then has collaborated a little bit with like Tim Robinson on the I Think You Should Leave stuff, but has
Mhm.
very much his own style of humor. This movie, three friends in the mid aughts in Tobyhanna, Pennsylvania, set out on an epic quest to record a rap album while one of the guys' moms is out of the house for like cosmetic surgery sort of thing. And they're like guys in their late 20s who, just like smoke pot all day and whatever.
Yeah.
So, uh, really funny, very specific, like cultural touch points. Like, there's one scene where you've got like a Wii on in the background and you have that little like me channel music or whatever. And it's just like, man, this so thoroughly captures like what it was like then and just like going to house parties, hanging out around town or whatever. So, rap world really really funny and definitely worth checking out on YouTube for anyone to see who wants to see it.
I gotta check that out. That sounds very much so right up my alley.
It is, it
Would you say
definitely
it's
is.
like mid to late aughts? Like,
Yeah,
was this like '08 that we're
yep.
talking about? Yeah,
Hmm.
that's totally my wheelhouse.
Yeah, you'd
Uh,
love it, you'd love
yeah.
it.
Okay, I'm gonna check that out for sure. Um, Sweet. I think I'm not doing all music mockumentaries, but all things that are music related. So I think I'm gonna start with a book. Um, I am a huge Led Zeppelin head. Like, they're probably my favorite band of all time. Um, and this movie is obviously like Led Zeppelin is certainly one of the bands that Spinal Tap is making fun of. Um, so I'm not going to recommend, songs remain the same or the new documentary Becoming Led Zeppelin, which I've actually heard is
Mm.
pretty good, especially if you're a fan of the band. But I'm going to recommend a book about the band that sort of just like goes through their whole history in a pretty thorough way. So if you're a fan of them, you would really enjoy it. I'm going to recommend Hammer of the Gods.
Ooh,
I don't
all
think it's
right.
like the definitive Led Zeppelin biography, but very enjoyable nonetheless if you are a fan of them
Very nice.
or just like generally kind of curious. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. My next one, I gotta, anytime you ask me for three recommendations, I'm gonna throw one in that like no one has ever heard of.
That's the
So
best.
um this next one is directed by someone that people may have heard of, Todd Haynes, who directed May December, Carol, Safe, a lot of really great, movies starring people that you've heard of, though they do tend to be more like independent productions. Um, this, I believe, is his very first film. It's 45 minutes long. It's called Superstar: The Karen Carpenter Story. It is sort of like a mockumentary or recreation of Karen Carpenter's life, who had an eating disorder and died very early. It's recreated entirely with Barbie dolls, which
Oh,
is
I've heard of this.
crazy.
Yeah.
But watching it, it becomes so clear like why it's done this way, because like considering someone who has an eating disorder's life with like the symbol of like unrealistic body expectations as like the person at the center of it is like, whoa, this is like really interesting and brings a really interesting dynamic to it. So it's definitely worth checking out. It is hard to track down because it's just like a VHS curio sort of thing, but you could probably find it somewhere on YouTube if you search long enough, because I don't think anyone's coming for the copyright on that one.
Not currently streaming on Netflix.
No,
I've heard about this,
it should
and
be. Yeah,
it sounds super interesting.
it's really good. It's really
Yeah,
good.
nice. I like that. Um, okay, I think for my second one, I'm gonna go with something that is fairly obvious because this is a movie that is pulling a lot from This Is Spinal Tap. And again, Brian, I think you and I are like around the same age, if not the same age. So this is a movie that is like very much so within my wheelhouse in terms of my comedic sensibilities, like something that my friends and I quote with each other all the time and reference all the time, like something that I think about probably on a weekly basis and laugh about it. But I just like I have to recommend Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story.
Ah, I love it. Yeah. I I didn't watch this when it was released, though I would have loved it at the time had I heard of it or been familiar with it. But we did see it um at some point after we got married, and it's great. It's really fun.
It's so funny, very silly. Obviously, like a bit more mean spirited than This Is Spinal Tap, uh,
Mhm.
but like because it, damn it, it cranks the humor up to 11.
Yeah.
Like it becomes funny because it is
Yeah.
so over the top. And obviously the scene with Jack Black and Paul Rudd and Jason Schwartzman and who plays the fourth Beatle.
I don't
Uh,
remember. Man, it's been so long since I've
but
seen this. Yeah.
that is like
I need to
one of the
revisit
funniest
this one.
scenes
Yeah.
of all time. And when it was announced that like they were like that Sam Mendes was making like his 4 Beatles movies, it's like we got the perfect Beatles
We
movie
got the
within that
casting.
one
Yeah.
scene in Dewey Cox.
I am excited for those though. Sam Mendes is a little inconsistent in his movies. Some really
Yeah.
great ones, some that aren't so great. Um
So it'd be cool
I'm
if
I'm also a very, like, negative Nancy on music biopics in general, but,
Mhm.
like, the interconnected, "Let's make a movie about each of the Beatles," like, I'm gonna be there for that. I'm gonna be in my seat for the 4th one, even if the first 3 are terrible, you know?
Yeah.
They got me with that concept. I'm
I
gonna be
hope that
watching them.
inconsistency comes through in those 4 movies.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
would be yeah. Um, Obviously, the funniest thing would be if the first 3 are terrible, then the Ringo movie is incredible.
Yeah.
You know, that's the funniest possible outcome.
That would be great. That would be great. Barry Keoghan, right? Playing
Is he
Ringo? I think
that's
so. Yeah.
that's wild.
Yeah. It'll be good. It'll be
Yeah.
good. I'm excited to see a Ringo movie. About
Yeah.
time that guy got some spotlight.
Poor Ringo. Always the
Yeah.
butt of the joke.
He is always the butt of the joke, but he genuinely, like, changed how drumming in rock bands is done. So, yeah. All right, third recommendation. You didn't take it, so I can give it. It's a Christopher Guest movie, Waiting for Guffman, where they're putting on a play, a musical, and title is a play on Waiting for Godot. They're waiting for this producer who's supposed to show up, and so they're trying to make this thing great. Um, and yeah, it's his sort of return to the music side of things after he does Best in Show and For Your Consideration and some other things. But it's iconic and great, and sort of funny to me that Christopher Guest is the one who had a career doing the things most like Spinal Tap, but more on the directing, but also starring side of
Mhm.
things from there. But everybody else sort of went in different directions from here, but they all had sort of successful careers. But yeah, Waiting for Guffman, it's great.
Yeah. It would have been a silly move for, both of us to go through this and not recommend at least one Christopher Guest movie, so I'm happy that you did.
Mhm.
So do you consider that to be his best or best in show? Because I feel like it's always, like, back and forth between those 2.
Ooh. I think I'd have to say Best in Show, but I'd need to revisit them close to each other. I watched them too
Mhm.
far apart to really have a
To
sense.
compare.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think best in show is funnier. I think it's more
Mm,
laugh out loud funny, but I think Waiting for Guffman is a better movie
mhm.
as a cinematic experience. Amazing. I love it. Okay, so I'm not gonna recommend Best in Show then. So I will recommend is another movie about a fictional musical artist. Um, maybe not as funny
Mhm.
as This Is Spinal Tap, but equally as compassionate, empathetic, towards its subject, and that is, of course, our queen, Kate Blanchett in Tar.
Yeah,
Tar
Tar.
Tar Nation
Oh,
stand up.
I love Tar. Yeah. I that was a breath of fresh air during a pandemic that didn't have a lot of movies for us to watch. Yeah. So,
Tar
big
was
Tar
was one of
guy.
the brights. Yeah.
Yeah. That was
Both
great.
members of Tar Nation.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, Brian, thank you so much again for hopping on. This has been so much fun. Truly one of the funniest movies of all time. I still can't believe it took me so long to get to it, but I'm happy I did. I'm happy that you got to it when you got to it and are a fan. I know we mentioned on the front end what a picture and you're writing on ScreenAge Wasteland, but where can folks find you online if they want to hear more of your thoughts on movies?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I primarily am on Blue Sky and Letterboxd. It's Brian underscore what a pick in both places. So you can hear my thoughts on the far too many movies that I watch in either of those places. And yeah, that's me.
Amazing. And everyone should check out your reviews on ScreenAge Wasteland
Yeah,
because
definitely.
they're great. Yeah, a lot of good
Thanks.
stuff up there. Of course. Um, thank you again for joining. I I guess people can find me on online too, uh,
Yeah.
on Blue Sky and on Letterboxd
Yeah.
and on Twitter. I'm still in that hellhole uh,
Yeah.
at Rafstit and all those places, and also occasionally from time to time writing reviews on Screenage Wasteland proper, so you can check me out there as well. You can check
Yeah,
out.
great Mickey 17 review. That was
Oh,
neat.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Um, folks can also find both of us on the Screenage Wasteland YouTube page talking about our way too early 2026 Oscar predictions with
Mhm.
Jacob Holmes, who does pole position for Screenage Wasteland. That's a very fun video.
Mhm.
If anyone has 3 hours to spare and wants
Yeah.
to listen to us speculate on what might be winning Best Picture a year from now, so very
Yeah.
fun stuff.
That video will be deleted in about 6 months so that we don't get super embarrassed by
Yeah.
the time things, like, start to actually take shape. So,
Uh,
no, it'll be up. You can dunk on us all you want. Yeah.
yeah, please do.
It's part of the fun.
I think there already might be a few picks that I made that can be dunked on at this point, but I won't
Yeah.
say which ones, so you can go watch the video and find out. But that's go check that out. You can also check out the Canon on the Screenage Wasteland YouTube page or wherever it is that you listen to your podcast, wherever it is that you're listening to us now. We will be back on the same feed next week talking about Brazil with our good friend Steven from the Stacks.
Oh, so fun. Yeah.
Uh, very much so looking forward to that. Steven is a great guest. We've had him on in the past he was on for Cool Hand Luke. So go listen to that if you want to get a
Mhm.
sense of the kind of energy that Steven will be bringing to our Brazil conversation. Another movie that I hadn't seen prior to prepping for the show. So very much
Yeah.
so looking forward to that. I hope to see all of you lovely screenagers there. And as always, in the meantime, we will see you all in the wasteland. Bye, everyone.